All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Path Podcast. I'm your host, Angelica Grace, and I have a really special guest on today, which I'm super excited about. She was like one of the first people that really popped up when I was like, I really want to bring people on, and I just love her perspective. I love what she does. And of course, we're in our training together while she owns her own business, but we've known each other for the past couple of years. So I have Mystique on here today, and we're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about the healing journey. We're going to talk about the struggles, and we're going to talk about all the good stuff. So thank you for coming on. I'm so excited.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited too. Obviously, you guys know that Angelica and I train together. So we've known each other for quite a bit now. And it's really nice to kind of engage in this way outside of training and really flow with this podcast.
It's nice because usually we're just like in class, we're learning, we're doing like deep healing. And then we just like leave.
You're like, bye, see you next week, do it all over.
Yeah. We're like, okay, well, great talking. Like, we'll see you next time. And we've just been doing that like every Sunday for the past like 2.5 years, maybe. So it's been a minute. So thank you for coming on here.
I appreciate it.
You have been, so I do want to start just talking about like how you got on this path. But the first thing I want to say is your business is beautiful. Like your content, how you show up, your messaging, just everything, like your presence is just really, really incredible.
Thank you.
So I would love to just first start asking you, I always love asking healers or intuitives this question because it's never what we think when we ask, like, how did you start on this pathway? Because there's always like a catalyst that really like pulled us onto this. So I would love to just start there. How did you know that this was your path as a healer?
How did I know that this was my path as a healer? From when I was a young girl, I knew how to light up a room. That was just something that I was always told. And so there's energy that goes behind that. And of course, at that time, I didn't understand it. But when I got older, I was always that person that would just attract these people when they had really dark moments in their life. And I was like their solace. I was like their sanctuary. And I loved it. And I was just like, yes, I'll help you through the darkness. And I don't know if it's because I saw myself in them. I don't know if it's because I thought I was wise, even though I was young, but there was just something that I knew that I could make people feel better, point blank, period. And a lot of it was through my communication and just the way that I speak. And I guess maybe there's influence in the way that I speak or something like that. But when people would reflect back to me, they were like, you're that big sister I never had. You're like, that one person that I can tell anything to. And I feel like healers across the board probably always hear that in their youth. And so when I got older, I was in many different things, many different fields. I was a makeup artist. I was in retail. I was in sales, like so many different things. And it got to a point where for me, I just couldn't really work for anyone else anymore. There's something inside of me that when you start working from the age of 15, you get burnt out by 10 years later. And so I was going through a process where I wasn't happy working for someone else anymore. And it just like doubled my anxiety, doubled my depression that I was already going through. And I told myself, like, listen, I know that I have a very strong mind. And if I tune in and if I learn and I grab some knowledge and practice whatever, I don't know, I didn't find it yet, but if I practice something to help my mind overcome my anxiety, depression, PTSD, whatever it was that I was going through, I would be able to function better. I would be happier. And I just wanted that. I just wanted to function better and be happier. And so, once you tell the universe something like that, it really responds. And it responded in a way where I was at work at a job I didn't want to be working, and someone who had worked there previously came in for a visit, and they were just like, hey, like, have you ever heard about the law of attraction? Super random, right? Like, how are you just going to fall at the sky and just like talk about the law of attraction? And so something in my soul knew what it was, like something called, like was ringing. I was like, okay, but I don't practically know that. Like my brain right now doesn't know what that is. I was like, please tell me more. And so they did. And I learned about Abraham Esther Hicks. That was like my first intro to spirituality. And like, what a great intro to spirituality.
Agreed.
So when I learned about Abraham Esther Hicks, I went down like this rabbit hole of law of attraction. It brought me to meditation. It brought me to spirituality. And before even knowing what a spiritual awakening was, I was starting to develop these practices for myself, and I would do so every single day, and it would make me happy. I would like wake up and like, I'm not anxious today. Like, what is this? And so because I went through that and I worked on these practices for about a year, then boom, all of a sudden on my birthday, on my 25th birthday, all of a sudden I looked in the mirror and I was like, you know what, universe, I'm not really going to ask for anything, because I was working with my guides at that time. I knew who they were. I bonded with them. I said, I'm not going to ask for anything much. Just make this the best birthday ever. And I kid you not, my psychic abilities kicked in that day. I was like seeing and hearing things in color, and like sounds and smells were different. I don't know what hit me, but it was because I was purging so much trauma. I was alchemizing so much within myself, and I was clearing these channels, and it allowed me to have these, extrasensory abilities, which everyone has. But at that time, it was like full blast. And at that moment, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to become a healer. And quickly after that, it went from me doing random like psychic readings on Instagram to me thinking about Reiki. Like these words would just pop up into my head, and then it would be affirmed by other people in my life. Random people like, hey, have you ever heard of Reiki? Have you tried this? A random YouTube video would pop up. And so from readings to Reiki, and from Reiki to shamanic apprenticeship. And it happened so quickly, but I knew it. And it was almost like the Reiki and the shamanic practices came hand in hand, where I just heard of both at the same time, but I knew I needed to do one before the other. And so I did the Reiki, and then a whole little story about how I got into the healing arts. But I signed up for all these classes. I saw Gina, didn't even know who she was, of
Oh
course,
my
but I
God.
saw Gina, and she was up there at the counter. She's like, we hold a lot of classes. And at that time, I had just left California. Super traumatic, life-changing events happened. And I moved back home. My scared little butt was like, no, I have to go run home back to mommy and like feel better. And so what do? You go and you grab some crystals, because I was like a crystal child. I was like, yes, let me grab some crystals, feel good. And I wound up there. Out of all the places in the world,
Oh
I
my
wound up
gosh.
here. And I signed up for all these classes, and I did Reiki with someone else. And after I was done with Reiki, I got an email, and Gina's like, hey, do you want to do the shamanic apprenticeship? Like the level 1 starts right now. And I was like, yeah, like for sure. And yeah, and now we're here. So
I always love hearing the story of how we find healing arts, because this
yeah,
place has its own life force. Like it has its
yeah.
own energy. And I didn't realize it. I didn't realize that that's what had like pulled me into it. But I remember like shamanism calling out for so many years. And I kept trying to find a mentor that like resonated in my heart, you know? And I
Mhm.
remember I was going to go out to California. I was going out to Oregon. I was looking in Arizona. I was looking at all these places. And I kid you not, it was through when I was on Bumble. I had met someone on
What?
Bumble. I went on a date
Uh-huh.
and we became friends, and we were dating for like maybe a second. You know, we went on like 2 dates, but we became really good friends. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm just going to like talk to him. And we connected like more spiritually, right? With other really opened me up to different like avenues of spirituality. And I was like, man, I really feel this call to study shamanism. He's like, oh my God, you have to meet Rodrigo, like he does these live burials and he did blah blah blah. Within like, I think I emailed Gina and she's like, yeah, we have level 1 starting in like 2 weeks or next week or something. And I was like, great, I'll pay in full. She's like, no honey, we just come in, don't worry about it. And then it was like, and it cracks me up, because I'm like, I would have never known like how the synchronicities of how everyone in our class, and I'm sure everyone in this place,
Mhm.
like has found this place, is just like, it's a calling, it's a pull, it has its own life force.
Mhm.
It's like you can't, it's undeniable.
Yeah,
I love
a
hearing
thousand
that.
percent.
So I love hearing what you had said. So I would love your perspective on this, because I think when people are really wanting to strengthen their psychic mediumship, their intuitive abilities, things like that, the first place I always start with them is letting things go. Like we have to, when we talk about traumas and we talk about different fears, we talk about the things we're holding on to. Like the reason that my abilities sort of re-blossomed, let's say, was because I had been purging tremendous amount of childhood abuse. And I was
Mhm.
going through a divorce, and I had like lost everything. And it was like literally overnight, all of a sudden, it was like you said, I was seeing colors differently. I was hearing things. Loved ones were coming through in meditations. I was giving messages. So I would love your perspective on that. Like when you talk to people about strengthening their intuition, like, do you agree that it is directly connected to, like, I guess we can call it that shadow part, or that sort of those pieces, those dark pieces within us?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's quite interesting. I agree with the whole purging. That's exactly what happened. I was in at the time I was doing all the spiritual work where the law of attraction, everything, came through. I was with a very toxic partner and they literally told me because of my anxiety, like I had a parasite. And I was like, that is so harsh. Like whether I had a parasite or they called me a
Right.
parasite, like two in the and from there, it wasn't like that didn't start my spiritual journey. I was already on it, but that really kind of triggered me in a way where I was like, well, there is something inside of me that I do wish to release, that I do wish to, get out of me. I don't know if I would call it a parasite, but
Sure.
it would go more along the words of the shadow, of the root. I knew once I went into the spiritual like education and they said work on that root first, I was like, okay, here we go. And I just opened myself up so much. I feel like that's one of the biggest things. If someone wants to enhance their intuitive abilities, mediumship abilities, anything like that, their spiritual gifts in general, you have to be so completely open to a new way of life, so
Mhm.
completely open to facing everything that comes up. I didn't even know things were going to come up, but when
Yeah.
they did,
Oh
I
yeah.
just had to trust in my higher self. And thank goodness I learned the things, in a way that made sense. Like I learned about a higher self really early on. I learned about spirit guides really early on. So when I was purging and I was releasing, I would tune into them because I knew that they would save me from anything. If I ever got scared, they would be there for me. And I never felt alone, even in a very, toxic relationship where you are always feeling
Right.
alone.
Right.
So I definitely agree with the purging, the releasing, the letting go, because if not, you will never grow in any capacity. So if you're wanting to grow that intuitive ability, you have to let go of something else, whether that's your former life, a trauma, anything really that could be holding you back. And it'll surface up organically, but you have to be willing to let it go.
Yeah. And even willing to listen to it too, because a lot of the times I think people get stuck in like one thinking that they're stuck in it, right? Like this is going to be the finality of what it is, like this
Mhm.
trauma reliving itself or this cycle reliving or whatever it is. And it's like, no, those are opportunities to break through it because it's coming up for you so that you understand what that pattern is or what that is. But I think if you have really strong like community mentors, friend, right? Like it's,
Yeah.
I don't want to say it takes a village, but it takes a freaking village. Like I think about Rodrigo, Gina, Remy. I think about our class, like how many are there? 11 of us, like
Yeah.
each and every one of us, right? It's like it takes support. So it's like having that support system makes all the difference too.
It really does. It
Sure.
really does. And even if you guys who are listening feel alone, always know that you're not. I mean, we talked about, everyone that we know, that's a part of
Yeah.
our journey. But before I even had everybody, I felt like I was doing it
Oh,
alone. And some
same.
people are going to feel that way too. But again, that's why I stress so much of like that higher self, that spirit guide, whether it's an archangel that comes to you, a deity, goddess, whatever, like you know that there's a presence, you feel a presence, especially if you feel called to that path of healing or developing your intuition. You feel that greater being or greater energy, and you know that you cannot be alone as long as you tap into that, have
Yeah.
access to that, which you always do.
That's a great point. Cause I'm like, I think back to before this place and I was like, I literally was doing it alone. And I'm like, and it feels really isolating. So,
Mhm.
right, leaning on your team. Are there any, like maybe one or two practices that you would recommend that can help you kind of strengthen your connection with your team? Just little things that you think people can do.
Yeah, with your spirit guides, for
Mhm.
sure. The biggest thing that worked for me, which I want to point back to, especially if there's anyone who, I mean, it could be for people who are advanced in spirituality, and work for people who are beginners too, just kind of entering in that space. But something that I call an energy purging technique, which is something that my higher self had taught me, where I basically do this mudra where I make my hands into the shape of like a triangle, and it's like a little mini portal. And I went from the roots all the way up to the crown, and I sit in like a meditative pose and I ground. I like to do it outside, but in the times where I was really depressed, I could barely get out of bed. So I did it in bed. Works just the same. But I would start at my root and I would have my hands basically with this triangle shape right above that area of the root. And I would just allow myself to purge any energy that needed to come out, anger, frustration, rage, sadness, happiness, giddiness, whatever, like it needed to come out and it would. And I would ask my higher self before I did this practice or my spiritual team, like, hey, help me out. And when I asked them to help me, they always came through. And that's what really strengthened my bond and relationship, because I would talk to them about my good days. I would talk to them about my bad days. So that bond was already established a little bit. But when it came to healing myself, it was like they were there tenfold. So when you ask, permission, like, hey, like I give you permission to help me. Can you help me in this way? They will come forth. And so when I did that energy purging technique, I started at my root, sacral, solar plexus, all the way up to my crown. And some days it would just be the root. Some days it would just be the crown, like depending on what I needed. But after I purged everything out, there would be a moment of like stillness. And then all I would see in like my third eye or imagination was white light. And then I felt it emerging into that space. So as much as I was purging energy out, it was like my higher self or source creator, whoever was building more energy inside of me or putting more energy inside of me, restoring me and revitalizing me. And that's literally what shifted me from a constant state of survival mode to a place where I actually could find peace and knew what it felt like. And when I was able to access that many times during practice, when I was outside of practice, much easier to tap into that peace. So that whole entire, technique helped me really reach and bond to my guides and my team.
I love that. It's like they were restoring what is naturally there normally, that white light, that peace, that stillness. But then throughout life, right, we like take on all this stuff from our experiences and all these, the traumas and the harsh words and things like that. So it's like, yeah, you were being restored. That's beautiful. I love our spirit teams. I mean, I know they know that. I know everyone knows that, but like they know their shit. They know what they're doing. So
they really do. It's just like I always call them like my Google. I mean, I don't mean it to like deduce anything that they do, but it's like they are like the internet times a million, because I can ask them anything and they'll always report back with truth. And I really, really love that.
Yeah. Yeah. With love and with truth. I agree. Yeah. I love that. So I would love then to hear about your business, because, you brought up survival mode and the root quite a bit. And I see this a lot, just one within myself, like repairing the root. And I think that's why the apprenticeship has had such a powerful impact on me, because when we experience these childhood traumas, it's like that root is like ripped out from underneath us, right? So it's like my connection to Mother Earth and my connection to safety just was non-existent, right? You don't feel safe in your body. You don't feel safe in your surroundings. And shamanism has really helped me repair that. So then my ability to open and receive and channel and mediumship and all these things has just really expanded. But I notice a lot just collectively, especially with COVID, especially with the last few years, I think a lot of us are really reestablishing our root system or coming back to that, because I notice so much of survival mode in our society, just everywhere. But I would love to just highlight just your business and maybe what it is you do and what you're noticing, how you help people. I'll put it that way, not what you do, how you help serve people. But then also, like, what do you notice about like the collective that's been really coming up?
Yeah. So in terms of my business and what I help people do right now, I've transitioned my business in a way where a lot of it was focused on kind of like entertainment / Reiki. I just wanted at the beginning everyone to know about spirituality, everyone to know that they can heal themselves, everyone to know about Reiki and how magical it is. And it really still is. But when I went through this apprenticeship, it allowed me to get like a fuller, but also deeper understanding of healing. And because we tap into the medicine of Mother Earth so much, it allowed me to not only have like that base and foundation from below, but because the Reiki, I had it from like above as well. I had all that energy from above and below, and it made me feel complete. And I didn't know I wasn't feeling complete with
Yeah.
just the Reiki, because I was like, oh, everything's so magical and pure and blah, blah, blah. But then you come into the apprenticeship and you're like, okay, but here's how to get rid of the stuff that's really gunky, you
Really.
know,
Oh yeah.
and specific and pinpoint it. And so I really love that. And so I was able to kind of steer a little bit away. I still use a lot of Reiki, but I steer a little bit away from just kind of that performance art of entertaining people and trying to like get the whole collective to wake up through Reiki. And I transitioned it into teaching other people how to understand what their energy feels like, how to discern it from other people, how to know when your energy is being stolen from someone else, and how to protect your own energy, how to revitalize yourself, how to fill your own cup. So basically, my spiritual background and how I healed myself is a huge influence of how I help other people do it, because I love being a practitioner, but at some point you can't always like just tell people to heal and expect them to do it. I don't know. That's been something that's been challenging. So when I am there teaching them, letting them know, and I see that, you know, I'm attracting those people who are wanting to heal, it makes me feel more fulfilled as a healer. So in the business sense, I've definitely used this apprenticeship to help teach others what to do, not just be a beacon of where people can come and rest and restore, but how you can do it yourself too.
That makes sense. And I like this question came up right when right when you started talking, but what do you feel like, I guess I could say like, what do you feel like has been your favorite part about the apprenticeship, like about the training that we're learning, but also like, what do you feel like has been the biggest game changer in what we've learned? Like, is there a certain tool or perspective that like just totally changed the game for you and your healing abilities?
Yeah, in terms of like one of my biggest takeaways, I think it was definitely just medicine of Mother Earth in general. I like collecting the tools, going outside, trading with Mother Nature, give some tobacco, get something in return, whether it's sage, whether it's a feather, whether it's, you know, something. I like the use of organic materials and having those tools, and be able to rely on those tools. I feel like that's super significant to me in my journey, in my process, where, you know, maybe I feel super overwhelmed by someone's energy while I'm working with them, and maybe Reiki is not the best modality for them in that moment. Now I have something else to kind of dig into, and maybe the rock can go ahead and absorb that energy instead of me absorbing that energy for them. So that was definitely a really big, significant thing that I learned. But in terms of like a game changer, it would definitely be grounding. Like for sure, I talk about grounding every single day,
Yeah.
as many times as I can. My followers probably are so annoyed by me giving the same tip, but it's just like, when you do it, you will understand what I'm talking about. And really, one big thing was understanding that when you are grounding, you're using like that magnetic energy of the earth, and it's pulling things out, but also it is enhancing your connection to the divine, enhancing the connection to source. And so you cannot go so high up without going so low down. And that was like a huge game changer for me, and something that I then started to implement to my clients as well.
Yeah. And it's so funny because and I'm sure you come across the same thing, but it's like one of the biggest messages just within readings or healing sessions, whatever it may be, is like, you need to go put your feet in the ground. Like, you need to go ground. I want you to flex that muscle as much as you can the next like month or two, like whatever it is. And it sounds so simple to where I almost think people are like, yeah, I'll go do that. But it's like,
Right.
no, if you really show up and consistently ground and you put your bare feet there and you connect with Mother Earth, like your life will change.
Yes.
Like 100 billion%. Like that was like one of the biggest game changers. And I think too, just like the society we live in, just everything, it's like we lose that sense of just stillness and of connection. So it's like when we really
Yes.
get back to that, it's like your life changes dramatically.
Yeah.
And I always say this when I'm teaching psychic mediumship, people always want to, channel, and they want to have these abilities and all these clear messages and da, da, da. And I was like, go put your feet in the grass and go
Yes.
do that consistently,
Yes.
because that is how you get to that point. Like you
Yeah.
have to have that connection with Mother Earth.
Yeah. And to piggyback
Um,
off of that, it's like not just the physical action, because that's what you're saying. Some people are like, oh yeah,
yes,
sure, I'll get to that eventually. Or maybe they do and they do it for like 2 seconds. But
right.
there's a crucial element here that I know that we probably both stress, but maybe it doesn't hit those people who are just trying it out for the first time. It's not just the physical action of going and putting your feet on the ground. Yes, that's what you do, and that's what we advise you to do, but it's about the communing. It's about the communing with nature, with Mother Earth. We are children of Mother Earth. So it's like the same as not seeing your mom for a very, 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 very
Yes.
long time.
Yeah.
It's nice to get that nice warm hug from mom. It's nice to get those cookies that she bakes. And obviously, Mother Earth isn't just going to have cookies on the ground when you go grounding, but it will have little seeds of knowledge or seeds of information, some downloads, some codes. There's a stillness, there's a tranquility that only when you're in that state can a lot of transformation happen. And so it helps you take away a lot of the heaviness and the density of life by being able to go grounding. So if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling bombarded with a lot of responsibilities, taking a minute to go hug Mother Nature, so to speak, will allow you to let go of all of that. And when you are in that practice, you can then do so when you're not grounding much easier. So if you're in a moment that's super chaotic, you will remember how it feels to ground and how it feels to connect, and you'll snap yourself back into your inner being instead of continuing to chase the external things that are not going well or going right.
Yeah, like that present moment. And I think too, for those that don't have a strong connection like with their moms, right? Like people who have like maybe there's some abandonment or resentment or whatever it is, like with their physical moms right here. It's like
Yes.
to help repair and nurture your own feminine and your own connection with your mom, grounding, like everything you're talking
Yeah.
about, because some of us, a part of our journey is maybe not having that nurturing from our moms, like from our physical,
Yeah.
biological moms, right? So
Yes.
sometimes we don't realize the significance it has just within our own being. Do you know what I mean? And our growth and our development. So a lot of the time, even to just heal that part of us or nurture that part of us, to even heal that quote unquote wound with our own moms, like reestablishing your connection with Mother Earth is a beautiful place to go, because you can start to receive that sort of truth of mother energy. Do you know what I mean? So it's like it's available to all of us. It just is like it's here,
Yes.
and she's literally always here for us. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's such a beautiful, I guess we're just loving on Mother Earth today, which
We really
I'm okay with.
are.
I love it.
Totally. And she'll give you reminders too, like
Oh yeah.
that second that a bird comes and you know, like anything, like there's a raindrop that falls from a tree and hits your head.
Yeah.
There's one time where I was walking in my backyard and I was in a tizzy. My mind was like all over the place. And I'm walking, and I walk right into the branch of this tree that I always talk to. And it was like she smacked me in the head, like, you got to go ground and
Like,
you got
come
to go
on.
like find some stillness and some present like moment. And it's those things where you hear that bird that wakes you up in the morning. Like all of those are ways that she comes to communicate with you to let you know, hey, it's time. And
Yeah.
hey, also, you're not alone.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. It reminds me of just the magic of her and of
Yeah.
nature. It's just the best.
Yeah.
So as far as, I guess I want to talk about business for just a minute,
Yeah.
because when I think about business, especially as a healer, and we were talking about this very briefly before we started recording, but how when you run a business, you place all the roles in business,
Hmm.
at least in the beginning, right? Like when you're starting to build
Yes.
it. And sometimes it's really hard to balance energies, life, the creative, the logical, right? Feminine, masculine, and
Yeah.
still have it like coming from your heart. And I think that's where a lot of challenges come through, as like shifting from healer or intuitive into a business mode, because it's like you're learning to flex both muscles, and you're learning like a totally different, like a totally new skill. So
Yes.
as far as your business goes, what do you feel like has been like your biggest challenge growing your business, or continuing to like allow that to nurture and grow? What do you feel like has been the biggest challenge?
Honestly, I feel like a lot of people have gone through this as well. It's for me, staying authentic and organic while also having to sell something for money. I don't know what it is, but it's like such like a trip. Like you need to have sustenance in your business. You need to survive yourself. You need to put food on the table, but you're doing so in a way that's so like healing and great and beautiful and lighthearted. Like there's, I don't know, you said it best when you said like that feminine and masculine. The feminine is like nurturing and yes, come here and embrace and like let's make you feel better and comfort you in the way that you need to. And then there's like that hunter gatherer aspect or like the hunter aspect of it where you have to go forth, make this goal and,
Yeah.
strive for more and make sure that you have enough for this and protect, protect, protect. So to balance both of those very like opposite, but very balancing and necessary energies can be very, very difficult. And I feel like for other things, like let's say for retail, there's not so much that's nurturing in retail. You sell a product, you have it that's there, you know what's good about it. And anyone who comes to that door, it's got to be that one product, right? But when it comes to healing, there's so many different things. It's more intimate. And so balancing that intimacy with also having that price point of what it is, and maybe even you're scaling your business. So maybe you have people
Yeah.
that have worked with you for a long time, and now you have more experience because you've worked with them for a long time. And now you have to scale up your business and you have to
Yep.
have that conversation where, hey, everything that I've been giving you, now it's much more. And it almost sometimes, not all the time, thank goodness, but sometimes it comes as like an insult to them, or they will process it however it is that they're projecting, right?
Yep.
So I think the biggest thing is just the whole sales versus wanting to just nurture. Because for us, I think why it's such a challenge is because when we nurture, when we comfort, when we want to communicate, when we want to heal someone, it comes so effortlessly. We want to do it for everyone. We want to give everyone the biggest hug. But when we do that, sometimes we also don't protect our space, our peace, our energy. We don't protect what we need as well because we're so giving. We also are not working on the receiving end. So, as much as it could be difficult to make those sales and go and be that masculine energy, we also have to receive the fruits of our labor. So, balancing that in a way where it's super authentic, super genuine, and sometimes it's difficult too, because the social media space, internet, people that we're not even meeting, how do we convince someone to like, know, and trust us if they haven't even been in the same room as us?
Yeah.
So social media is great, but also can be a barrier in that way too for business.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like still remaining personable, vulnerable, personable,
Mm-hmm.
and authentic. Do you know what I mean? And like knowing your worth as a healer, because you know the
Yeah.
transformations that this work provides to people. And it's like it's saved our lives. Do you know what I mean? Like it's the work that's
Yeah.
literally helped us
Yeah.
get to where we are. So it's like, of course, we want to share that, of course, but we do, it's like we can't, we all know this, but like we know we can't pour from the empty cup. And I think
Yeah.
it that is a big mindset shift, I think, in the industry of just like owning the pricing, the just all of it, in addition to just knowing your worth and knowing the impact that you're making, and just having
Absolutely.
it come from the heart, not from an ego place.
Of
It's a
course.
really fascinating journey to be on. So
Yeah.
I
I
agree with that.
think one like little other challenge to put in there would be not necessarily having to convince people, but there's something like that where it's like, how good it feels to be like healed in the way that you're healed. You know how much, potential you could like heal somebody, like how much healing potential you could offer somebody. But it's like you can never really convince them to heal in the first place. And to me, that like drove me mad. I'm like, I want you to heal. I want you to feel better. I know you're going through something right now. But if you don't want to do it at the end of the day, I can't really convince you. I
Yeah.
can't push you in that way. And I think for us as healers, we are just like, man, like lost another one. But we have to at the same time remain optimistic, like, but when they're ready and when it's their time, it will happen. So I'll just send them love and we'll see what happens. But we know that when they're ready, it's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. Because they have to be willing to, like, one, of course, put in the actual work to do it, but two,
Yeah.
to receive it. Like I've been noticing that a lot lately. Sometimes it's hard for people to even receive the healing, like to open up enough to receive it. Like if
Yeah.
we've been so closed off and if we've been in survival mode for so long, like sometimes it's a couple of layers just to get through to feel safe to opening back up to receiving
Yeah.
that. So that makes sense. Um, Do you feel like your own healing journey has like influenced your business? Like, and especially with how you've kind of shifted like your message and your purpose behind your business, do you feel like it's because of, certain milestones or certain layers you've kind of hit within yourself, within your own healing journey? Do you feel like it relates to your business?
Always, 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 always. And I think I felt this, or maybe I saw it and noticed it more when I was doing like readings for people, psychic and tarot readings for people. But when you have healed and you've hit that milestone and you feel better, all your clients are from that milestone that you've already healed. And it's like you're in a constant state of accessing these people and being a beacon for these people who are just like a level or two levels. And I don't want to say below you, but something that you've already conquered, something that you've already been through. They're just at that point, and now you get to help them through it. And it's so rewarding. But I did definitely notice that when I was doing those readings more so that, like, let's say I got out of that toxic relationship and now I'm doing a lot of healing. Now I'm doing some readings. Now all the people who are coming and being clients of mine, they're in toxic relationships. They don't know how to get out. They don't know how to heal from it. So definitely it goes hand in hand. But at the same time, it's so great because it makes you feel confident with what you're doing. I've been there. I got through it. This is how you can too. And then when they go through that journey, they want to go and help someone else. They want to help even their best friend. If they're not necessarily a healer, they want to give that information and pass that on. And that's always a beautiful moment when it comes to that.
It's like that ripple effect of how we create change, like to me, that's how we create change in the world, is like exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I remember I was listening to this podcast. I think it was yesterday, but they were talking about how like you could hear the same message over and over, and then that one person says it and you're like, holy shit, that would like, that's it, that changed my life. Right.
Yes.
And the difference between that is when someone has gone through the experience and now they're teaching it from the embodiment of that result, right? So like the toxic, like, how to get out of it because you got out of it, how to heal from that. So when you speak on it, it's literally coming from your heart. It's literally coming from your being because you've gotten yourself to that frequency or that space. So people can feel that. Like people can feel the difference in that like meat and potatoes of like teaching and sharing and guiding. And I think that's what really sets apart certain healers. And even I guess this brings me to like another question that I had, but like as a healer, it's like the more that you embody what it is you teach or what it is you share, like to me, that's the difference in work, like that's when it just hits differently, so it's just like encouraging people to continue being vulnerable and continue, like healers, like continue to do your work, continue to be vulnerable, because it's like you're just continuing to create a greater change just within yourself and other people. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So just as a healer, then what do you feel like if you could communicate something to others about the journey, what would you say? Like, what advice would you give people on the journey? Like either as a healer or someone who's on the healing journey? Like what's some advice you wish that you had when you had those moments where like you felt alone and you felt like, how the hell am I going to get through this? What advice would you give to that version of you?
Everything's temporary. Everything's temporary. I don't know why. It's still sometimes I forget. When it's because we're just human. And when we have an emotion, it fills our whole entire body. It fills our whole entire being. And sometimes it influences our decisions. And then it influences our external reality. So it can feel like it's everything. It just like it creates a space where we don't feel like we can get out. It almost like encapsulates us.
Yeah.
And so when I have that moment where I'm feeling the walls closing in, I'm feeling the encapsulation, my mind is running 1,000,000 miles per minute, I say, oh, it's temporary. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And it makes me like come right back to myself, because as humans with emotions, we can spiral up, we can spiral down, but sometimes we will have that spiral. And a lot of the times we don't have someone else in that moment to be like, hey, cut that out. Like, you know, hey, here's your reminder, like whatever. You have to be that one, and you have to just remember it's temporary, because if you forget that it's temporary, you'll stay in it for longer for sure. But just remembering, hey, it's temporary, hey, it's going to change. And you're like, okay, great. And then at that moment too, you can take a look at something that was challenging in your life that you've been through before. And you're like, well, I got through that, I can get through this. That's also a way to kind of help yourself get out of it. But definitely for people who are called to be a healer, or people who are just on a healing journey, just remember that it's definitely temporary no matter what you're going through. And also remember that the happy moments are temporary too, but that doesn't have to be such a bad thing. Those happy moments that you're experiencing, even if they're temporary, you soak it up. Like I literally just try to breathe in like all the happy energy that I can and stay high flying for as long as I can. Like there are some times where you are stuck in like a low vibrational moment or event or situation, and it's really up to like God or creator or source to drag it out for as long as it can. Like sometimes there is like a divine timing situation where you have to stay in that pressure cooker for a certain amount of time. But when you have that avid communication and bond with your guides, you'll kind of know like, oh, you know what, I'm going to be in this for a hot minute, but in this time, let me just sit, let me find some stillness, let me find some peace. Any moment of happiness, I'm going to milk it for as long as I can. And when I get out of here and I start to feel that climb back up, I'm going to soar, I'm going to spread my wings and just allow myself to get as high as I can possibly go, but in a way where I can sustain it too. Not just trying to always find that next fix of like instant gratification, but get to a place of happiness where you're content to cruise and cruise for as long as you can. You don't always need to flap your wings. You could just stay there. And in that moment where you're starting to feel that decline, don't get worried, because the moment you get worried, sometimes it just brings you right back down and it feels like your wings are clipped. But that temporary like moment or mantra, whatever, really, really helps me get out of it.
I love that. It was reminding me of whale medicine, because and I have whale medicine, I think, in my emotional space. And I think of whale to me as like that really deep emotion. Like it's like the depth of our emotions. And like you said, when we're in it, we think that there's no way out. Like we think that that's it forever. And it's like, we almost like, that's where I think we can get stuck in it, where it's like, we do have to remind ourselves, like, this is not constant. Like it's going to continue to change. We're going to go through the ebbs and flows. And it's like a beautiful reminder. I have to remind myself too sometimes, where I'm like, okay, this might just be a temporary, like we're just feeling this for a little bit. We're going to feel it and we're going to keep moving forward. Like we're not going to stay here. We're not going to hang out. We're going to do what we have to. And then we keep moving forward. So that's some good stuff. So just before we kind of wrap up here, I have one more question. What do you feel like you're most proud of within yourself? Either as just you being you, your business, your healing journey, anything.
I think one of the things I'm proud of the most about myself is that I always gave myself the opportunity to shine as brightly as I could. And with me, it kind of doubles into my business as well. But like, even someone who's come from a lot of childhood trauma myself, a lot of trauma, even in my teen adult years, I was like, for a moment, when was it ever going to stop? I still never let that be something that completely dimmed me. I may have been dimmed, but I just always knew I had the light. And I was like, as long as I let it shine, I'm going to be good. And so I always reached or urged, or I always tried to get myself to a point where I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling at my lowest. Let's see how much light I still have at my lowest. And I would just, allow myself to expand in that way, in whatever it was, whether it was dancing, singing, whether that was talking to someone, whether that was going out, doing something by myself. Like I would always allow myself to kind of breathe free from whatever darkness I felt that I was in. And that translated into my business, to where I was able to reach a very broad and organic following. And I know it was because of the Reiki healing, but I know more so it was because of my light. Like I just shine, and it's like, it's not something that I can ever hide. And I'm the only one who could take that away from me. That was just something I always knew. Like no one, no matter how hard someone's screaming at me, no matter how hard someone is trying to manipulate me, at the end of the day, you can never take away what I have going on.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed to have always known that about myself. And it brings me back to a point where My brother, he's 7 years older than me. And I remember when we were at dinner when I was very, very young, he was always like, oh, when you're older, you're going to go through all these phases and you're not going to know who you are and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I know who I am. I'm Melody, And
Yeah.
I was like, this is me. And I always remind myself of that moment because even when I was that young girl, I was like still not afraid to shine as brightly as I possibly could, even at my lowest. And so translating that again into business, it allowed me to develop a really broad sense of community. And even sometimes when it's challenging in business, I have to remind myself, I'm going to let myself shine. Even if they don't like the way that I shine, even if they don't like the way that I do it, I'm going to still do it because if it makes me happy, it's going to set me onto a new course or a new path. And that's fine for me too. So I'm very proud of myself for always knowing that, whether it was my higher self letting me know or whatever it was, I'm very blessed and grateful for knowing that about me.
I feel like that's your heart. Like that is your essence. Like when we talk about the light and the light shining, like unapologetically, it's like you just allow your essence to come forward. And just like you said, your organic following. I'm like, no, it's because it's you. Like it's because it's you and it's your light. Like, duh, that's why people are attracted to you because you have a beautiful essence. It's just who you are and it comes from your heart and you can feel that. You can totally feel that. And everything you do. It's like even when we're just like eating fruit after class, do you know what I mean? It's like you can still feel it then as you do in your videos and your teachings and things like that. So
Thank you.
it's
Thank you. Thank
beautiful.
you.
So I know you have a couple of really exciting things coming up. So is it okay if I like just
Yeah.
kind of go
Yeah.
in that direction as we close up?
Yeah.
So, and I do want to hear about that and just how people can follow you and things like that. But I know you're teaching a class here. I know you're teaching at Electric Forest, right? That's the name of
Yes.
the fest. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you have just a bunch of different just offerings and opportunities to work with you. So if you want to just share like your how people can find you and just like what you have going on the next couple of months.
Yeah, absolutely. So people can find me at mystique.awakening, basically on every platform, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok for sure. I even have a membership um, program that allows you to have access to long form distant Reiki healing videos, a lot of spiritual content, psychic content, things that'll help you fall asleep, all the good stuff. But the classes that I'm holding, yeah, I have a movement workshop to help release stress and anxiety from all four bodies. So physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Because I feel like when we break it down into those four segments, it's much easier to realize like, oh, this is exactly where I'm holding the stress. This is exactly where I'm holding this anxiety. And now that I know this about myself, I can tune into that one aspect of my being and release or, revitalize. And so I have that workshop going on at Healing Arts, June 30th at 7 p.m. on a Friday. Super excited for that. Electric Forest is happening next week. That is something that I manifested that for sure. It came through. We love when we have those manifestations that finally come through. When I was 15 years old, I heard about Electric Forest for the first time and my heart lit on fire. I was like, I have to go, I have to go, I have to go. And it's been something that like I would write down and like always see and have it in my mind. And then last year, over a decade later, was the first time that I was able to go. And so I went and I saw that they had workshops and I was like, oh my God, it's not just concerts and EDM. Like this is actually a place where you can go and learn about spirituality. This is amazing. I must do it. And so I went, I applied, did the thing, and they selected me. So I'm very grateful. And of course, Mother Nature in the house, it's grounding into the forest. So I'm going to be the very first healing workshop of the whole entire weekend. And it's to help people who are stressed, overwhelmed, anything like that, but especially geared for people who get social anxiety in large crowds or feel very jittery or overwhelmed in large crowds and concerts. And so it's to help ground into the energy of the forest and have that forest help you, protect you, heal you, no matter what's going on for the rest of that date, that festival. So that's going on Thursday, June 22nd. So that's very exciting. And the last thing that I have going on is my Master Your Energy journey. So that is a 4-week journey that helps you to understand what your energy is, helps you protect your energy, helps you to understand manifestation in a way where it's easily broken down into little segments where you can then apply it. And if your manifestation isn't coming through, you can quickly look at that breakdown and say, oh, this is where I need to put more energy into, more focus into. In that Master Your Energy journey, we also go over ways to help enhance your intuitive abilities so that you feel one with the world around you and that you can start to really thrive in life instead of just survive. And so to be able to access that, you can go to my website, mystiqueawakening.com, and you can scroll down and you can see that rest and restore movement technique. It's a freebie, and all that will lead you right to the Master Your Energy journey.
Beautiful. And I just want to pause and like, please tell me you celebrating the workshop that's here, because when I saw it, I'm like, it's gotta be Melody. And I was like, I've been waiting for this because I like kept hearing that you're going to teach something. And I'm like, I can't wait. Like in person. But did you take a minute to just celebrate Electric Forest and celebrate like where you're at and how far you've come and what you're doing?
To be honest, not fully, but it's coming. I'm a fan of rewarding myself every single day. I truly am. I'm not the kind of person to hit a huge milestone and be like, on to the next. Like, I'm a Taurus. I love to chill, sit back, soak it all in. I just haven't had the availability at this time because I'm preparing. So when I'm preparing, it's like, but I am meeting up with my festival buddies in 2 days. And so I feel like in 2 days, I'll sit and be like, I'm with the forest family, and now I get to like celebrate. We're all here together. We get to prepare little things. But I should have a party. You're kind of reminding me low key that I should take a beat and find a time to actually celebrate myself for that in-person workshop. 2 in-person workshops. I'm so used to doing things online. Everything I do is strictly online. So in person is definitely something that's been a long time goal, and I should celebrate myself.
You should, I don't want to say it's work, but it's like you're constantly showing up for yourself and others. And that takes time and energy and commitment. And that's a big deal. So I'm really proud. I know our whole class is, I know everyone here is. So congratulations.
Appreciate
and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
But thank you for coming on. This was amazing. I'm sure we'll probably have you on again at some point, but
yes,
good luck with everything. And make sure to give Mystique a following and check out all of her offerings because they're amazing.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. Love connecting with you always. And until next time.